So, hello guys. I've decided to create this video because I had some real trouble starting with V-Ray and Blender, and I want to give you a kickstart in the sense that you don't have to find out the basics things as I did have to do. I will go very briefly over installation, setup, like 40 seconds or something like that. And then I'll show you what's where, what I think does, what kind of functions are there, and stuff like that. So first off, when you are installing the V-Ray and Blender together, you need to have a special version of the Blender. It's called like Blender with V-Ray standalone. That's free, and that's the first thing you need to install. The second thing you need to install is the V-Ray standalone. For that you have to buy it. It's much cheaper than the 3ds version and the other versions, so it's really a steal. But that's the second thing you need. And the third thing you need is the license server. You can download all three of these on the Kel's website. Kel's is the creator of V-Ray, so it's conveniently in one place. What happened to me recently though is they have upgraded the V-Ray, but they didn't keep the version you can download. So I own V-Ray 3, V-Ray 4, they call it V-Ray Next, came out. And when I downloaded the file from their website, it wasn't for my version, the version 3, but I downloaded the V-Ray Next version, so it wasn't working. So just when you're downloading it, make sure you are downloading the proper file for your license. Otherwise, it's just not gonna work, and it's really messy to troubleshoot. Okay. So you just install all those three. There are like instructions on the web. I just wanted to emphasize you need also the license server, which is kind of not mentioned or not mentioned properly. So after you have installed it, you go to user preferences, to add-ons, renders. You can now of course just search it up there, and you just click this button, which is not gonna be checked, so click it and wait a little bit, and it's gonna check it, and you can save user settings. And okay, so that's how you set up the Blender. If you have both Blender and Blender with V-Ray, just make sure you're running the proper one. You can tell so by the title. Okay, once you have everything set up, make sure to go here, because otherwise it would be working in whatever you had preset. Okay, so that's the basics. Now if I just press render, it renders something, right? Okay, so I will go now through the nodes list, node editor, and I'll show you what roughly nodes do. I mean, what kind of nodes are where. This took me quite a while to figure out actually in the beginning, because I came from Cycles, and it works a little bit different, but in the end it's totally confusing. At least it was for me. So I didn't work very much with textures, so the first step here is you can look it up, you can ask around. I'm not gonna spend time with it here since I don't have first-hand experience in it. V-Ray World Node 3. Now this is an interesting one, because it's basically what used to be, well, not only used to be, what's here also in Cycles. The thing is, don't click here new. It doesn't really add anything new. I mean, there is a new tree, but it's not activated. What you need to do is you need to click it here to assign it. You see? And now there is something. What are these 4 things? They are basically now you have just a black background everywhere. So if I just press render, there is only the light from the light. Let me just do one thing. Yeah, display. Just keep UI, set it like this because it doesn't render in the Blender anymore anyway, and it just messes your display every time you press render. Back to the environment. So now we have just black background. If I disable rendering of this lamp, you can see just pitch black, right? So let's do it the other way around. Let's give the environment background. Let's make it white. You see? So this is how you set up your background. The second one is GI reflection refraction. What you can do also is you can set up. I'm a bit confused now. Yeah, textures, image texture. You can set up HDRI environment, which I highly recommend, and you can plug it in basically, you know, like whatever, like this. You control the intensity here, and you just go here. You can go HDR. Let's say I don't know, it's just HDR. I just randomly picked something up, although these are quite big. I hope it won't take too much time to load them. Oh, and I did a mistake. I did UV. I need to be in environment. You can actually map them now with UV transforms. So if you go like math transform, this is how you connect it. And this is how you should be able to rotate it. It doesn't work for me as I thought it would, but it's doing something. So if you need to rotate the environment, you do it with this transform. The other way to do this, and some said this is not working actually properly, so you need to set up a dome around, like a light dome, which is working much better, and you have this, and you can rotate the dome, which is supposedly the better way. I'm not sure how correct and up to date is this information. Maybe they solved it, maybe not. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know there is an option to rotate the environment. Once you have it like this, there should most likely be and it's crashing. Is it crashing? Yeah, I think it's too big. Let's find something smaller. I think Rexal, yeah. Yeah, Dam Road seems to be fine. Yeah, it's blue, and I believe when I set this to linear, you can go also for gamma corrected one. I think they are the same, because this is for specifying gamma and this is for gamma 1. What it is doing is it's not basically deforming the colors to fit into its bit RGB range. Well, that doesn't matter. I don't want to go into too many details. As you can see, the colors have changed to a much more realistic one. So that's what you want to do. Once again, I'll show you RGB. You can see this crazy blue, which is, and you can also see the background is not very correct. And if you go linear or gamma corrected one, bam. HDRs are, I would say, standard now for getting a very good lighting out of the box. So this is how you set up HDR and V-Ray easily. I'm not gonna go into too many details here. Let's go to another tab. Lights. Lights are for light objects. So if I enable my lamp, I could go into the lamp tree, and where are you? Here it is. And you can do all kind of connections into it. Basically, if you want to simulate, let's say, a tree canopy, you would just drop a light, a color texture into the light, and this is where you do it. You just put image texture here and connect it. What is of interest is let me see where they put it. Yeah, IES. These are quite popular lights. What it does is, instead of just having the flat light, which is unrealistic, you load, let's say, I say it as a texture, light texture, and you are getting light similar to a normal bulb you would get, or you can of course get a lot of different light sources, and this is looking better, this light. If you can get IES file, and there are out there on the internet, they are free, and I think they are worth the trouble of setting this up if you are so inclined. Okay, so this is lights, just basic again. Now this is probably the most important one, or the most used, I would say. This is for V-Ray Node tree, this is for materials. So if you click here, you see it appeared here. I will very briefly go through what each setting does. This is something you can easily find in documentation. So there is not much value in going into details. So this is just kind of shading the object has. This is better for, let's say, plastics, and this is said to be better for metals, and GGX is kind of supposed to be better overall, I think, but it's more computer, it's more demanding. So next, this don't mess with these unless you have something to solve, like you are rather experienced and you want to improve the render times, or you need to improve the quality beyond what you are getting. Then you would go into these kind of things. You don't want to do that in the beginning. Basically, you want to leave everything as is in the beginning. And this is the only setting that you probably are gonna switch on and off in some early stage. Just let me see if I'm actually recording this. In some early stage of playing around with V-Ray and Blender. Fresnel reflections. Let's say they make a material more realistic. It's when you are looking at the road, and if you are looking towards against the sun, the road becomes like a mirror, and every object has this kind of increased reflectivity with a bigger angle at which you are looking at. The same is with water. If you are looking straight into the water, you can see down what's below, but if you are looking at the lake, like in a distance, it looks like, reflective, like a mirror. So it's the Fresnel. What you can do is disable it, and if you press render, and you need to put reflect on. Yeah, you are getting mirror. So this is how you make a mirror in a V-Ray. It took me a while to figure out that too. So Next one, opacity. This is apparently how opaque is the object, how translucent, like how much can you see through. It's about halfway, and you can see through the cube. So that's it. Diffuse, it's the base color, not non-reflective color. I mean, the base color. Yeah. Roughness and reflect glossiness are, I believe, the same. I'm using reflect glossiness, but you should get the same result with using roughness. Self-illumination is, well, it's quite obvious, right? Self-illumination is how illuminating is the object itself. I believe this one does not cast shadows, so you want to you need a light source for that actually. So this is good for LCD panels, which you don't need to see reflection of in other objects, but don't use it as light sources. Reflect is the color of the reflection. You will notice, let me see, let's make it red. If I only actually did make it right. Yeah. So this is the color of the reflectance, and you need to differ between the diffuse and the reflect. And you can see the Fresnel in action here. This is blue because we are looking straight at the object, and this is getting more red because there is more Fresnel in it, like more angle. If I put the camera like this, watch what happens. You see, there is a Fresnel. I'm rather surprised because I would say the Fresnel should be on the other end too. Never mind. So let's set the camera back. Metalness. In V-Ray 3 it wasn't working. I think they added it in V-Ray 4, which is V-Ray Next. I haven't really worked with it, but what it does is it defines whether the object is metal or whether it's dielectric. Dielectric is everything except metal. It's materials that are not electrically conductive. The reason why they are sorting this out like this is it behaves differently it interacts differently with light. So if you have a metal object, you go with 1. If you have non-metal, you go with 0. Reflect glossiness. This is how shiny or how polished the surface is. This is rather reflective. Let me see if I can get another one. Maybe a sphere would be better. For this, use sphere. Anyway, it's how. If I go like this, you can see the difference there. One is very glossy actually. You can see the actual differences on websites. It's one of the main parameters how we control how the object looks. Let me see if go glossiness here. This is like this. I know why I'm not getting. Okay, so this is the first one, and this is the second one. Yeah, finally. Damn it, it took so ages. Sorry for delaying this. So now you can see what it does very nicely. Glossiness on 1, it's nice, shiny, reflective. Glossiness on the sphere 0 is just diffuse. It's just rough. You can go 0.5 and you get something in between. Okay, so that's it. Fresnel IOR, basically you don't need to worry about this too much in the beginning. If you want to get into it, look at the IOR materials or values for the materials. There are some charts on the charts on the internet. Use them as a guideline. The thing is, the formulas used to calculate light paths in a V-Ray are not like completely accurate. They are very good and very accurate, but they are not like 100% accurate. And the material may look a little bit different, so you need to approach this a little bit artistically. That IOR, basically you are with 1.6 you are fine with the most materials. Then you have like plastics, which are a bit higher. Like I think plastics are around 3 maybe, like shiny plastics, and then you have metals, which are like maybe 6 up to 20 or something like that. But you don't need to do that. This is more specialized. It's just affects at what angle you start to see the Fresnel we were talking about. So smaller, whatever, I don't want to get into it too much. Anisotropy, this is when you take a frying pan, for example, and you see those little lines, shiny lines, when you turn it around. It's I don't know how to exactly describe it at this point. Just Google it and it will be very, very obvious what this is about. So this is the setting where you do it, and you can have a rotation for it because the frying pan, it has like this, but then when you have polished surface, like some sort of cylinder, it can be polished this way, so you can rotate the angle of the polishment, whatever. You can go even more wildly here. What refract? This is another important not stat parameter, I would say. This is for materials that are translucent, that you can see through, like glass, water, and everything. So if I go with refract here, with full refract, it's messing up with this one. Let's turn off this. Yeah, and now you can see it behaves like glass. So this is where you do it. There is one thing is refract, and another is fog color, and you have to be really careful. Like if you go like this, it's way too much. You see, it's like really super dull. What you need to do is be really gentle with saturation here. Just, you know, more like a dip of color than actual. Even this is too much. Yeah, now we are getting better colors, and you see what minuscule value was there. You can go like 0, 1. Yeah, and this is starting to look like glass, right? This is like this little bluish tint, and you have seen the number I put there, so you have to be like really super careful there with the numbers. So this is the proper way to color the glass. This is you can get the same effect here, but this one does have depth and this one does not, because if the object is more, let me grab the monkey. If the object is, what's happening? Hello. Okay. Let's color material 2. Okay. Okay, let's do it like this. I think we can just discard the cube due to low popularity. So you can see that areas that are not so thick are not so heavily colored when you use the faux color, which is what you want, like ears and the chin, right? As opposed to, you go saturation 0 to make it white. And if I put the same or whatever value here, I can go like this even, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And it reflects the other color, but whatever. But what is important is you can see the colors are basically the same intensity in the thicker and in the thinner places, and plus it's reversed with the color. So you don't want to go with refract. You want to go in most cases with color texture. Translucency, it's wax, maybe soap. It's like oh yeah, and leaves and maybe some fruits. It does let the light go through, but only of one color. You can Google it. So let's just see translucency. I would need to probably turn it on. I'm not sure where it is turned on at this point. Probably somewhere here. I don't want to get into it anyway. This bump texture, bump amount, and normal texture, they are your classical bumps. So let's turn the refract off. So we are not having glass anymore. We are having a normal object. Okay, it was reflect, not refract, sorry. So like this, let's have some reflection there. So we are back to undefined, right? I'll go with diffuse, like much higher. So it's more like white-ish. Ciao. Sorry, it's my son. So this is normal texture bump. So texture, let's take some noise. You want to have always this 3D Max in it. If you, I will first plug it into color so that you can see the color difference, I'm pretty sure you can. So in color it doesn't do much, I mean, apart from changing the color, but in the bump, you should probably choose intensity over color here. You can see it gives you an illusion of a different surface, like surface height, and this is where you plug it into. You can give the amount and here or here. The same goes with normals. I don't actually have a normal map ready at this point. It's that bluish map, like everything seems like blue or violet there. So you would plug it here with this one. Don't forget, there is one thing when you are plugging inside images into diffuse and reflect, and I would say also into refract. You want the image to be in V-Ray settings. You want to have this as sRGB for most cases. If you have special data, this may differ, but this is the default random picture you put in, right? You leave it to sRGB. But for other values, such as metalness, reflect glossiness, the difference between these two, you just don't basically use highlight glossiness today, unless you are working with some obsolete, like older workflow. So don't worry about this too much if you are starting. It used to be a way to simulate some materials better. It just gives you a different color in reflection, in highlight, whatever. You just don't use it. You can go Google it if you're really interested. For a beginner, this is not something you would use. Anyway, back to the image. In Fresnel, I'm pretty sure here too. Here, basically everywhere where it's not actual color, but where it's data, you would use either linear or gamma corrected. This is again for random images. This is not for specialized data which you have prearranged to have like a special setup. Okay, so if you get a random picture from the internet or from a friend, the chances are this will need to be sRGB, and these plugs need to be either gamma corrected or linear. Gamma corrected one and linear, I believe, are the same. What you could do is, if you want a specific gamma correction, there used to be a different one default for Windows and Macintosh, and you would need to color correct an image. You can do it with a different value, but again, for a beginner, this is not an issue, or should not be. Okay, so this is basically about these nodes. Another, well, yeah, this is compositing, which you probably want to work with in V-Ray, so at least in the beginning. So this is, I would say, this is an advanced topic. So what this does is, let's take our plane back. If I render this image, it looks as expected, right? You can see the plane there. I'm gonna turn off Susan and Sphere. So this is just, oh sorry, this is my son wanting to play with me. Okay. And what you can do, and you will be probably very curious how to do it. Again, you need to press here the plus, not here. You can put geometry in, and you can go, this is where you get the displacement, by the way. you can go with infinite plane. So geometry, infinite plane, bam, and the plane is infinite, which is not so well seen in this angle, from this angle, but yeah, this should be very nicely visible. You see the plane goes to the infinity as opposed to normal. Normal black. Yeah, this is something you will probably want, especially if you are doing like photographic shootings. These are channels, not something to play around in the complete beginning. You can just add it here. Just know that it's here, and that's it. So that's about this part. And I will see the next one. Yeah, let's go through the render settings very quickly. Animation, this is where you set up if you want animation. What I do usually is go frame by frame, let the program export it, each frame, and then I composite it in After Effects or in a different program. The advantage of this is if you can do it like, you can render like 20 frames, then go away, then you have a free computer, so you let it run another 20 frames and so on, and you can divide the work into pieces, and then when it's finished, you just take all the images and make a sequence out of them. So this is a real lifesaver. And even if if something wrong happens, if you were exporting directly to MP4, let's say, and it messes, it's much more difficult to repair it, if possible at all, than to repair one botched image from a sequence, right? Re-export meshes, this may save you time if you know the geometry is not changing. If you are changing just color, let's say, you can switch it off and save yourself some time. I don't do it. Caustics, it's reflections of the light, or refractions, not reflections. It's that colored light when you see when you have a glass of water, let's say, on the table, and it's making those weird lights. Sorry. Those weird light patterns. That's caustics. Displays, subdivision. This is if you want to use it. It could save you some time not to use it, but I'll just leave it on. Bake, you don't want to mix, you don't want to go into baking in the beginning. This is where you do it, but that's a rather advanced topic, and I believe it wasn't working properly when I was trying it out, like maybe 2 years ago. Maybe they have fixed it, maybe not. You want to skip it as a beginner. Stereo is for stereoscopic glasses. Yeah, VR and stuff like that. You just generate 2 images, and when you put them together in a 3D glasses. Speaking about 3D glasses, just a second. Okay, never mind. This is where it's done in the stereo. VFB. No, I haven't really used this. I think it's like some scripting and stuff like that. Like presets. Pipeline. This is layers. I'm not sure if you will need this for beginner stuff. If you need to go deeper into this, there are forums. There's documentation. You most likely won't need it. No, not so important. Just remember to keep this like keep UI, device, CPU, GPU. They have added, I think, in 3.6 hybrid mode, which should be like CPU and GPU. Chaos Cloud. CPU is your processor, GPU is your graphics card. Both have its advantages, disadvantages. it's rather complicated. If it works for you with a GPU, just make sure you have CUDA enabled. If this is your first setup, I think you need to also for V-Ray set this up here. CUDA, you need to show which graphics card you want to include in that. So next, textures. Sorry, I'm again playing with my mouse. Okay, textures. This is not something you mess in the beginning with. Termination settings. Yeah, this is max render time. And you can set a limit when you want to end rendering. This is how refined the image is. If you have like noise in the image, you can adjust this. This is the dimensions of the final image. If I do it like this, it's gonna be rectangle. Right. Aspect ratio, self-explanatory. This is what you will use very often, because if you want just a quick preview, bam, it's done. You know, it's fast, small. If you want to go for full quality, you just put 100% on, and it takes a bit longer. You see, it's taking its time. So this is where you just quickly make previews by lowering this. Border crop, obvious. This is where you set your animation. This is what I was talking about, doing the animation in batches. You can make the batch, and let's say you need to work on the computer now, and you just stop the batch, and you stopped at frame 30. Then you have some work, and then your computer is available again. You go somewhere else. You just put like 31 here, let's say, and it's gonna start on frame 31 instead of 30. So this is how you do this. Step, how many frames you want to take. So you can go every 10th frame if you need to for some previews, let's say. FPS, frames per second. You should know what this is about. This is frame. Yeah, this is for adjusting the frame rate if you want to convert some frame rates, but it's complicated. You don't want to do that. You are better served doing this in After Effects or dedicated program than in here. It's doable, but it's messy. Render mask. You don't want to know this in the beginning. Output. This is where you output your images. This is default. It will make a subfolder render, and in it put another folder with a Blender file name, which is up here, which is not saved at this point, but this is how it's structured, and this is the name. You probably want to use these symbols, especially when creating sequences of images. Format JPEG, which are okay if you don't need transparency, but the chances are you will need transparency. So you can go either OpenEXR, which does have many advantages. I think for beginner, PNG is just fine. I think 16 it's a bit overkill for most work. If you need really go for 16, you are into some serious color stuff, and most people just go with 8 mostly. You can go with 16, but it's overkill in my opinion in most cases. I would say, like, if you don't need 16, go with 8, like this. Okay, so this is probably the only or the most important here, image file need frame number. This will ensure that after the image, you will also get a frame number. Without this, you would be generating the same image file over the same name, so it would be overwriting the same file again. So you need to click this if you want actual sequence. It's rather stupid, but it's how it's done. Image now alpha. This is if you want, like, it shouldn't be even in JPEG because JPEG doesn't have alpha. Does it? No, it doesn't. I'm just confused now. But anyway, if you wanted a PNG and you want to make sure it doesn't have alpha, alpha is transparency. You would click it here. Image separate alpha. If you want to generate an image of the transparency, what you could do is like go with JPEG and image separate alpha, and then you can composite it together, for example in After Effects, like having the base image as the color, and then you, with a mask, you overlay it with alpha, and you just create a cutout. Okay, this is well, it does what it says, but I don't think you need it in the beginning. And image to Blender, I haven't used this. I believe it's because of the compositing. You can Google it, not sure there. Globals, this is nothing you want to clamping maybe. If it's too bright you can adjust the clamping, but I wouldn't really mess with it. Yeah, just don't do it if you don't know what you are doing. Well, once in a while you may come here, but again, not for complete beginner. Here is the gamma of the final image, I believe. So if you wanted a different gamma, you would set it here. Again, maybe it's better to do it in some Photoshop than here. I think Max, I think they used to have like 1.9 if I'm not mistaken gamma. So if you need that, you can set it up here, but don't do it. Input gamma, comp output, displays, subdivision. This is not something you want to do in the beginning, I believe. GI. Okay, this is big one. Global illumination. You want to use it, or you don't. It gives you really nice effects, like more light, like diffuse light. Mostly you want to use it, but you don't have to. If you can Google it, what it does. It will be probably like this or this for you. Maybe with caustics, if you want caustics. Yeah. Most likely you don't need caustics unless you are doing a lot of glass or a lot of metals. So you can sort of turn this off. Oh, primary engine, brute force, light gauge. Yes, you want to basically leave this. You can go with like yeah, it's not even here. Yeah, you don't mess with it. Ambient occlusion. You may want this. This makes the crevices more pronounced. This is not something you want to mess with in the beginning. Okay, so nothing here. Sampler. You can progressive is fine. Adaptive DMC is another one that used to be. I don't think you need to be concerned too much about this in the beginning. If you have like issues with your final output, or you have like time constraints and you need to really get the best quality in the least time, then you would mess with these two. But for a newbie who is just trying to get out some images and say, oh look, it's V-Ray, it's Blender, it's looking good, Okay, you don't need it. QDMC. So system distributed rendering, it's for having more computers working on the same image. You can set it up. It's not like very easy to do. You need to have some knowledge, and you don't need it as a noob, which I consider myself to be too. So I'm not using it as an insult. So exporter, yes. Export smoke hair. This could give you some. If you want to just a preview and you have like a lot of hair, or if your scene is smoke heavy, you can cut the time here, but don't do it. Okay, show the badge. This is, I believe, yeah. This is because of the transport between Blender, V-Ray standalone, and V-Ray renderer. So don't mess with these unless you know what you're doing. What is interesting is lens effects. Yes, please. Lens effects, bloom, glare. You can export it. However, it does have a cost of increased performance costs. So if I set up DOF enable DOF, let's see the limits here, and okay, let's just go with Susan, or you can go either like select an object here, or you can go with direct this one. Okay, it would be nice to have the Susan actually being rendered if I want to do something with it. A little bit differently this time. Let's put the cube here, back here, into the action. So okay, this is one cube, and let's say there's another cube here, and one more somewhere there. Okay, I think this is enough for our purposes. Number too low, I guess it was. Let's go with camera, depth of field. This is gonna be very heavy, I think, on the blurriness. Yeah, but you can see the difference now. I'm gonna leave it like this just for demonstration purposes. Oh, you didn't like it. So that was the depth of field effect, and I think you can adjust it if you export it like that. You can adjust it also in your lens effects. Yeah. Okay, so let's go with bloom is nice, glare effect, glare. Yeah. I thought there is also depth of field setting here, but I'm not gonna trying to find it here at this point. The important thing is it's more blurred. Let's just make one more to make it even more pronounced. Okay, I'm not sure if it's acting up now or if I'm using the incorrect information. No, I'm not. It's just applying this other effect too. Oh, I'm really curious. It should be like that. I think it's acting up. I think it's maybe somewhere I turned it off. So let's put this off. Put this off. Hello, no gloom, no bloom. Anyway, so that's where you set up these things. You can play around with it. As you see, there are a lot of adjustments to be made on the way too, and you will get better by experimenting. So yeah, hardware accelerated. Okay, maybe this was the problem here. Bloom, villages, glare, villages, blinds. Okay, so that was the last category here, and I think that should get you started. Yeah, we can how to plug an image into a texture. It's the same as in normal Blender. You just put texture, image file, and you put it where you need to, and you select the file via the open, and you select the projection. Probably want UV projection. UV unwrapping is exactly the same as in normal Blender. So you go either manually, mark, edge, make. Mark seems to should be here. I'm not sure why it's okay. Maybe it's because it's subdivided. Let me see. Nah, it's not here. I'm not sure why it's not working now. I'm just getting too tired. Anyway, the unwrapping should be the same. Let's go like this, unwrap. Let's make some smart UV project, and let's check it out. UV. Interesting. Oh, I don't want to render. Oh no, I clicked the wrong one. What else? Oh yeah, combining materials. It's the last one we want, probably. So let's just leave one cube there. I don't want plane. Which one is this? Okay, so we should have only one cube at this point. Oh, let's turn off the. This one, what's DOF? Yeah, by the way, motion blur is here, as you can see. Okay, so you have now the normal one colored cube. Let's put it somewhere more visible, yeah, that's good. And let's say you want to mix the colors inside it. This is getting a little bit messy, because what it's supposed to do is there's a layered BRDF. If you want to mix two materials, I'm not talking about colors, I'm talking about whole materials. You can mix like glass with wood, let's say. You know, part of the object is glass, part of the object is wood. So this is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about different colors of the same material. Okay, so this is layered. Here it is. So you see that they don't match actually, these colors. Well, so what you need to do is or what I do actually, I'm not sure if it's correct, but it's working for me, is I go like this. You go single, layered, and now you can either go with BRDF Vera material, which is very similar to this, there are some different settings, but this is, I would say, former setup, and this is the latter one. This is the newer one with BRDF. So what I have found out actually is I can use these two and just plug them inside the green ones, and it's working. There might be some glitches though, so do it on your own risk, right? So if I have like the second one, let's say it's gonna be black, white is gonna be non-reflective, this is gonna be very reflective. Good. Now you see, it's not this is 100%, it's a strength, or one strength. So everything is gonna be white with no reflection if I render it now. Yeah, it's white with no reflection. Then you can go like 0, which is, as you have probably guessed, is the blue with reflection. It's not very obvious, the reflection, but you can see it, it's there. And if you go half here, you are gonna get like some gray, partially reflective, some, yeah, you are gonna get something either way. This is interesting because I think I'm still getting this. Oh yeah. Good. And what you can do, and what you probably want to do, is control the amount of each on the surface. So let's say some texture. Do we have some Voronoi or something like that? Voxel. We can go with noise. I just wanted to make it more like checker. Is there a checker? Yeah, there's checker pattern. Let's try that one. Because you see, checker is gonna be just white and black. Yeah. It's because of the projection. We would need to go with mapping. Channel, object projection. There should be like UV map. We can go even with channel. Channel named. And I'm just okay. So environment explicit. I think object is not, yeah, it's the object itself. It's not UV channel. There is somewhere the UV channel you can plug in. I'm not sure where it's now. I haven't used it for some time. For our purposes, it's gonna be object or generated or something like that. So mapping. We can go with projection, whatever. Mapping, let's try planar. And now it's gonna be very nicely done. The checkerboard. And it's overriding it for some reason. Not sure what's happening there if I just clicked some default material there. Anyway, the first version you saw was the proper one. What it should be. Maybe it's because I'm using these materials instead of the BRDF. Let's see if that's the case. So let's make one. Okay, this was white, non-reflective. and this was black, reflective. It doesn't matter because it's plugged inside. Well, it should stay hopefully now. No, for some reason it's overriding the render. I probably pressed something wrong somewhere, like default material or something like that. Not sure what's going on there. Anyway, this is how you plug layered materials. You can even animate it. You can do anything with it. What else is there? I think that's it. Lights, we have been through lights. Objects, yes. Or how you make smoke. That's fog, smoke, and this kind of effects. They are more complicated, and I advise you to check out tutorials. There is a sample setup on the documentation, Chaos documentation for V-Ray Blender. Yeah, it was glitchy when I worked with it, but it worked. So you need some patience. It wasn't very easy to set up on the first try when I tried it, but it was doable. Okay, that was the smoke, fog. As for the other resources, you can relate most of the stuff from 3ds Max, which the settings work also here for, V-Ray for 3ds Max. Normals, yeah, whatever, it's the same. Yeah, I think that's it. So I hope I helped you get started. Go and check out the forums, Chaos forums. I didn't have much success in getting help elsewhere. There are some YouTube videos from, I think it was Reinhardt. That guy, he has some really nice videos about settings and more in-depth explanations. And your primary resource is probably going to be your trial error, googling for how it's done in V-Ray 3ds and Chaos forums. Okay, good luck guys!